What's up, everybody? Former principal horn of the Metropolitan Opera, Julie Landsman, joined me for a very special Inside the Practice Room, where she broke down exactly what she did in the practice room day after day that turned her into one of the best horn players the world has ever seen. Stick around at the end of this episode to hear a clip from Julie's Inside the Practice Room, where she discusses how she helped Nathaniel Silberschlag successfully prepare for his audition for principal horn of the Cleveland Orchestra, and use the offer code Julie to get $10 off at InsideThePracticeRoom.com/Julie today. Hello and welcome to the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you on this fine Sunday afternoon?
I'm unsettled by the fact that my office is messy. I'm a very neat person and orderly, and I'm actually, this is cool. This is apropos of nothing, but let's see. I don't know what the date of the thing is. So if this airs, so the 27th of March 2022, I'm doing a concert online for family. It's called Azure Concerts. Azure is the organization, and it's for families who are dealing with autism. Somebody in their family is on the spectrum. And so the whole concert is done. I'm doing it from right in this spot. And there's like all sorts of sensory, not issues. I'm having them do a variety of activities so they can participate in the concert from home. So
Cool.
We're going to be doing some things with cups and with boxes, and they'll make stuff, and then I'm going to sing some songs, play some euphonium, do stuff. But so there's just like pandemonium in all directions. But I don't like pandemonium.
Can we put a link to that in the show notes?
Yeah. We should. That's a good idea.
Hey.
Yeah, it's a really cool organization. I mean, it's really an amazing thing, and it's Pittsburgh based, but they're trying to spread the word and just have things for families that are dealing with this, things for them to do that are musical and cultural and multisensory. So
That's great. Speaking of spreading the word, we are doing the Brass Junkies Tuba Workshop is this coming weekend, if you're listening to this when it comes live. But I'm specifically wanting to spread the word about the scholarship drive that we are doing again. If you go to pedalnotemedia.com/scholarship, even a $5 donation, these are all tax deductible, by the way, thanks to the Harmony Arts Foundation, who we are partnering with. But last year we raised enough money with Pedal Note Media matching all donations. We raised enough money for over 120 students in over 20 states and countries as far away as South Africa, Hungary, and Brazil to be able to attend this event and also have access to all this stuff online long-term with some of the best teachers in the world. So again, that's pedalnotemedia.com/scholarship. Yes, we're if you host these things, you get to just like include yourself. You're like, and it's like Aubrey Ford and Beth Weiss and Justin Benavides and me. Yeah, you just get to lump yourself in with whoever you want. So you just choose impressive people, and then people assume, since, nobody's heard of us anymore except for us podcasters. Speaking of obscure, we'd like to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model euphonium mouthpiece. Yeah. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, big shout out to everybody who has become a Patreon patron. We are about to play the interview that we had with Sylvia Alimena, who is this phenomenal human you are about to hear. She has this legendary career as a performer, but also as an educator and as a conductor. And this brass of peace that she's built is like this creative force here in the Washington, D.C. area, whose effects have been felt all over the country. It's really, really impressive what she has done. This was one of those interviews where afterwards I felt like supercharged as a musician and just as an educator and just kind of trying to put things out into the world. She's wonderful. Yeah, really
real
wonderful.
Cool model for a career.
Yes, very cool model for
to
a
do
career.
both sides of that. And she we get into not like the leadership thing and the conducting thing and the education thing in addition to the music thing. So,
And getting
playing
hired
thing,
by
I should say.
Rostropovich, and and some of
good
her
stories. Yeah.
in the bonus episode, she shares a story of what Schulte said to the National Symphony Orchestra that shocked the orchestra. That's worth the price of admission right there. If you would like to learn more, you can go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to help to keep the lights on around here, and also to get access to a whole bunch of bonus content. And without further ado, let us get to this wonderful conversation that we had with horn player Sylvia Alimena.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more content by the Brass Junkies, just click on the like and subscribe button. You'll have an opportunity to see some of the greatest brass players in the world, and Andrew and me.
And today on the Brass Junkies, we are joined by a horn player, a conductor, and just a wonderfully nice person.
Thanks, man.
Lance LaDuke and Sylvia Alimena. Sylvia, how are you?
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Sylvia played a second horn in the National Symphony Orchestra here in Washington, D.C. for a very long time, which we're going to talk about, and is the conductor of Brass of Peace, which is this incredible group with this culture. It's not just a group of incredibly talented high school students. It's this thing that is really like the ripple effect of that group over the many years that she's been doing that has been and will continue to be felt for a very long time. So we're gonna dig into that.
Thank you.
As well. Yeah, it's awesome, and it would be awesome if it was just the students the caliber you're able to get just playing awesome music, but it goes really beyond that. So we are going to unpack that. But I want to start with your career with the National Symphony. What year did you start?
1985, and I had played a year with the Salt Lake, with the Utah Symphony the year before, and then I was freelancing in Boston for several years before that. I went to BU, and so I came in during Slava's years, and they were what I consider very golden years. We had a great time. It was a wonderful, joyful experience during that time. So I really loved my career. I loved playing second horn. I got to sit next to some fantastic musicians. It was great. It was a great 29 years.
That's a heck of a run. I feel like I was in Boston Brass for a very long time, and I was in Boston Brass for just barely half of that. So that's a hell of a run. What was Slava like? This is Rostropovich on the podium. Like, what was he like in rehearsals? What was his demeanor? Because it seems to me like he was quite beloved by the orchestra and by people in general.
Yeah, so for Slava, it was all about the artistry. He just wanted us to go for it 100%, blood and guts, leave blood on the floor, take no prisoners. And it just was all about the art. And so I would say that you probably hear that in our recordings. And when I listen to our old recordings, there's so much energy and passion and it just all came from him. It came from him. He was amazing.
Sorry, would you say that, how did he impact your conducting, would you say, or your rehearsal style?
So I think you just asked me, how did he impact? Somehow we got a little frozen there. Say it one more time.
How did he impact your either rehearsal style or your conducting style?
I would say, once again, he made it so that everyone was thinking about artistry at all times. It wasn't about, is the orchestra playing together, or is it about anything else other than how are we trying to affect our audience? What are we trying to do for them? How are they going to feel after we've played? And he had a couple of funny phrases. So one of Slava's phrases, when we'd be playing like a Shostakovich symphony, and we were just like leaving blood on the floor. He would say something like, "Oh, five old ladies in front row must die of heart attack." Yeah, and we knew exactly what we needed to do from that point on. That was classic Slava.
I was always taught that you needed to get your musical storytelling to the back of the hall, so you should try and give somebody in the back row a heart attack. But no, that's hilarious. That's very specific too. 5 old ladies.
5. Yeah, that was Slava. Or sometimes he would say something must sound like fork in brain. That was enough. Like fork in brain.
Oh, give us some more. Can you think of any more? That's hilarious. This is gold.
Yeah, Slava, I mean, it was just like there was constantly things coming out of Slava that we were like, as soon as he would say it, it's like we knew exactly how he needed to sound. It was great. And plus think about it, he was one of the great artists of all time. There he was on the podium for us every single day,
Yeah.
No.
Like fork and brain.
Like fork and brain.
I'm going to use that one a few thousand
Fork
times.
and brain.
Yeah. That one was like a fork in the brain to me.
Do you are there any in particular noteworthy concerts that you played in those 29 years that come to mind when I ask about it?
Yeah, I remember being on tour. It was a domestic tour and playing in Chicago Symphony Hall, which I had never done before. And we were doing a Shostakovich 8, which is, blood and guts.
Yes, it is.
And we were just like nailing it. It was just like we were nailing it to the wall. And a couple of Chicago Symphony Orchestra guys came in back and saw us backstage and were like, oh my God, that was incredible. Because, we just were going after it. We were just like, it was all about the blood and the guts and the fork in the brain. And it was, I remember it because, it's such an incredible place to be. And of course, the Kennedy Center Hall is not always that fulfilling to play in. So when you get to play in a great hall and you're playing great music and you're playing with a great orchestra and you're just like, wow, you're just like parting people's hair and five old ladies in the front row, they died of a heart attack, That's a good night.
It's a good night.
Did they remove the bodies in between movements, or did they wait until?
No, they just left them. Well, yeah.
All right, this may sound like I'm digging for dirt, but I'm not. When you have a force on the podium like that, someone's going to replace that person, and invariably their style is going to be different. I don't know who it was. You don't have to name names. It doesn't matter whether they were good, bad, or whatever.
It was Leonard.
Oh yeah, okay. So
it was Leonard Slatkin.
So now what's the transition? Like, what's that period from you've had this time and now you've got this other Titan? So what's the first concert preparation like?
Well, first of all, the repertoire was entirely different. I mean, while Leonard loves Tchaikovsky and all of that, the repertoire immediately shifted towards more contemporary music. Which kind of made the orchestra have to kind of perk up a little bit because, when you're playing Tchaikovsky a lot and Shostakovich, you kind of fall into a certain comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you got all this contemporary music coming at you and you kind of have to, I don't want to say up your game a little bit. It just kind of made everybody have to up their game. And look, even the Berlin Philharmonic went through that after Von Karajan. They had to play all this repertoire that they had never played before. And even the Berlin Philharmonic had to change, So we had to sort of up our technical game. And, I learned a lot from Leonard as a conductor. I mean, that was a real education for me to see how efficient he works, how he rehearsed, the things he rehearsed, the things he didn't rehearse, and how little talking Leonard did. Leonard he's like a wizard with his hands. He's like, it's like he's got a wizard's as opposed to just a baton, because what he can do with his hands is so amazing. And he can take an orchestra through an entire concert rehearsal, even without saying a word. You kind of know exactly what he wants by his hands. He's kind of a wizard that way. And I learned so much from watching him. I learned so much about conducting from Leonard.
How do you practice that? So you're in front of a group. So then is it fork and brain? Like, how do you try and emulate that? I mean, it sounds maybe... I know,
it's actually a great question. And so my answer to that is, I don't want to say it's obvious, but I would always say to myself, well, what would Leonard do? So for many years, it's like, well, what would Leonard do here? Oh, how would Leonard rehearse this? How would Leonard do this transition? Because he was incredible at transitioning from, let's say, one tempo to another, or 1 meter to another, or, going from 4 into 2 into a cut time. He was just still amazing that way. And I've seen him do many great performance without really saying a lot. And that's why he's a kind of a go-to guy. Like if somebody gets sick at the last minute, it's like they call Leonard Slatkin. because they know that he can get them through anything without any rehearsal, because it's all right there. It's all right there in the Wizards, baton.
And let's just stay with those two guys. Was the relationship between them and the orchestra different in terms of like the interpersonal part? I mean, was one of them more standoffish, or they were both pretty?
Well, so Slava, of course, was, Slava knew everybody personally, and he had nicknames for everyone. So, my nickname was Sylvia Chick. So, so he wouldn't just, say, oh, Sylvia Chick, and he'd come in for the big hug, and that was Slava, and he was a great psychologist. And he knew how to motivate every single person in the orchestra. He knew how to bring them in to him. He was a wonderful psychologist that way too. And so, there wasn't anybody in that orchestra that didn't feel absolutely loved, because that was his personality. He was all love. It was love of the music, love of the art. We were all his little soldiers for music. That was another one of his, we must be soldiered for music. It's just like, that was Slava. And so he made us come to him just by his very essence, and his great artistry and his passion. So I'm starting to tear up a little bit. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. That's for anybody who is listening who is not intimately familiar with like the conductor orchestra relationship, a conductor who can motivate every single person and make every single person in the room feel loved. There's a very short list in history of people who can like emphatically check both of those boxes.
Yeah. And frankly, I mean, I would say not that I learned that from Slava, but certainly in the orchestras that I have conducted and in Brass of Peace, I try to get to know everybody. The first thing I do when I become a music director is I learn everybody's names. And it's so important. You have to be able to connect with people. At the very least you can do is learn their name, Right. So that was another very important lesson that I learned from Slava, is that you can find a way to bring every single person into you, even if they're introverted. You can find a way to bring them in. Sometimes
this is also going to sound like I'm digging for dirt, and I'm not. But we because I don't like the who it would be doesn't make any difference. But we learn all this stuff from these fantastic leaders and conductors and people that were around, and we also learn a lot from the people who are at the other end of that spectrum. Would you say there are things in common about the rehearsals or the concerts or the experiences that you had that we'll say were less than ideal, that you were like, I need to remember never to do blank, blah, 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 because I don't want anybody to feel the way I feel in this moment?
Oh, I would say that, we have had instances where somebody maybe they had golden people in the orchestra, like, and you had the feeling like, I'm not one of those golden people, and the golden people, they would somehow get all of the attention for whatever reason that the conductor wanted to create golden people. There are always reasons why conductors have golden people. I mean, it goes way, way back in history. Why do conductors have golden folk that they never touch and they never say anything to? And then you're not one of those. And that's a kind of a terrible feeling when you feel like you're not one of the golden people, or you're not in that little clique of people who, has the ear of the conductor. So that, I would say that never felt good. And any orchestra, there is that. When that situation is set up, you have a few people that feel like they're golden and the rest of the orchestra feels like they're outcasts, and that happens, and that's never good. How's that for dirt?
That's fantastic.
That's good.
It's really good, because Andrew's the golden one on the podcast.
Yes,
it's obvious.
Yeah.
I'm just the one with the most fragile ego. So so it's just it's the path of least resistance for everyone to let me think I'm the golden one. So it's best for everyone.
Fork and brain.
Fork and brain. 5 dead old ladies in the front row. That's
I love that song.
That's gonna. Yeah, I think
That's going to stay with you.
I think that
That
was
image.
the Clash. I think. Yeah, that
It
was a good one.
How was ABBA?
Here's another question for you, because you're really good at putting all this stuff into words. Over a 29-year period, I'm gonna put words into your mouth here, if I may. There's zero chance that for 29 years that the horn section got along equally well during that entire time. And I'm not saying that there was a time when it was really bad, but I'm guessing there were times that it was great and times that it was fine and maybe times that it was bad. I'm not even asking that. But what is it that makes a section really, really cohesive? Would you say, does that always come from the principal player in terms of like a culture? And what is it like when it's really not clicking like that?
Okay, so there are several. I think it's a complicated answer.
Sure.
I think yes, it does start at the top, but what made our section, let's say, work in the beginning of my tenure is that we all play different horns. Nobody was forced to play the same horn. I know there are orchestras where it's like everybody has to play this horn or else forget about it. So we all play, and I personally think it worked great. So everybody played like a different horn. It weren't all Lawsons back then. I played a Rauk for a while. I played a Yamaha for a while. Somebody was playing an Alex. But I think when you have horns of a different, that produce a different spectrum of color, I think it makes for a more colorful sound in the orchestra, personally. Whereas if you're all playing the same horn, your instruments all produce the same spectrum of color. You know what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, they all resonate in the same way.
Yeah, and so I feel like in a way that's an opportunity missed, that if you have horns that make a different spectrum of color, then you get this huge palette of color coming from the section, which I think that's what we had back in the 80s and the 90s. We were always considered, and I will say this because people used to say it to us, we were the best section in the orchestra because we didn't tell each other how to play. We let each other do our jobs, and we had a very strong leader at the top. And so it worked. And so I think that's kind of what makes good sections work. You have a strong leader at the top. You let people do their jobs. And you don't tell people what horn to play. You don't tell them to play off their knee. You don't tell them to play on their knee. You just let them do their jobs. And that's a successful section.
Well, you let them be comfortable so that they can do the thing that they know how to do, the thing that got them there in the first place.
Exactly.
It's both common sense and groundbreaking.
That was put delicately. That's once in a row.
But don't you feel like, too, you make people like play the same instrument? Like if you gave me 5 different instruments in 15 minutes, I'm going to make them all sound like me anyway. Like you give me whatever you want, but I'm going to play this thing. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Right. Yeah. And if you took the same instrument and you handed it to 20 different people, they're all going to sound different because they are them.
Right.
And then we're fighting it 20 different ways instead of just let me play my thing and then I'm good. Otherwise, I'm having to adapt my thing to this particular instrument. And so then everybody else in the section is too. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, in spite of having an instrument sponsorship with XO and having a signature mouthpiece and all that, I've said to all of those powers that be that like good equipment, which I'm lucky to get to play on, but good equipment just makes it easy to sound like myself. But it doesn't like change what myself sounds like. That was almost English, but it's me play how me play, irregardless of mouthpiece. Yeah, but it's true. It's where it's the 5 inches between the ears, which is where like the concept of sound comes from, and the heart. And the heart. See, that's why Sylvia plays better than I do. Yeah, she's like, no, you don't think, dude. It comes from here.
Not true.
No,
it's actually 13 inches between Andrew's ears, but 5 inches for
fair
people.
He's got a big heart.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go with that.
I'm going with it.
Oh, Lance just patted you on the head. That was not patronizing at all. Hey, Lance, why don't you tell the beautiful people about Duquesne University?
Oh man. Beautiful people, wait till you hear about Duquesne University and the Mary Papert School of Music. a longtime sponsor of the Brass Junkies. Very, very, very special thanks to the Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University in beautiful and sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is actually both today. Doesn't happen all the time, but it is both today.
And it's February. How about that?
And it's
And
February. I know. It's our one day for sun this 3 months.
I can also say lovely things about this school because Brass of Peace visited a couple of years ago, and we had this great little collaboration with the brass folk at Duquesne.
Wow.
Did
Nova must not have been there.
He was there.
See, that's the kind of thing that you could get exposed to and have experience with if you are interested in studying music at the university level. Please click on the link in the show notes below. And below what? I don't know. But below. And you'll be taken to a site that will show you all the groups you can play with, the fantastic faculty you can study with, and some beautiful and sunny photos of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So very, very, very special thanks to Jim.
Great city.
Slightly larger head than normal Nova for making that possible.
There we go.
There it is.
Lance, that was beautifully done, and
that was one of them.
And Sylvia's like topical, and
I know.
Interjection is like we're almost getting the hang of this here. What is this, episode 185? But we're
shut her down.
I think this is going to be our last. And we've actually already have another one recorded, but I don't think we're ever going to release it now. This is it. So I want to now talk to you about Brass of Peace rather than me telling everybody more about it. Why don't you just give us the spiel, and then we'll unpack it.
Sure. So Brass of Peace was started in 1977 by the cornetist of the Army band, Gil Mitchell. And when Gil decided to retire and leave the area, he was looking for somebody to take it over. And so he asked me to come in. I was probably one of a few people. He asked me to come in and work with the kids, and I think he wanted to get a sense of who did they want. So I came in, I worked with the kids, we had a great time, and so I inherited Brass of Peace from Gil Mitchell in 1990. It was technically the 1989-90 season. So I kind of had half of that year with that particular group, and they were wonderful. It was a wonderful way to start because I had some folks in there. Heather Schatz was one of those original members, and Barry McCommon, who's a bass trombone player. Do you know any of these folk? I bet you do.
I know.
And so we had a wonderful start. If you had asked me if I'd still be doing it after 33 years, I think the answer would have been yes, because I love it. I love working with kids who really want to be better. Not everybody who comes through Brass of Peace is going to be a musician. They sometimes want to go into physics, or they want to be doctors, but they have this incredible ability already. So every group is different in terms of the composition and how serious the kids are. But we strive for really one thing, and that is great artistry. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but it's not too early to talk to kids about artistry in high school. So it's always about going towards artistry. How do you want to sound? What kind of color do we want to make? What kind of phrasing are we going to do together as a group? How do we want to affect our audience? And it's never too soon to talk to people about artistry. And so it's always about the artistry. It's always about the artistry. And after, 6 or 7 rehearsals, we get around to, how do we get each of our little bodies to go towards artistry? And so sometimes I'll do like little mini master classes, or I'll do what I call guinea pig time, where I'll have like a kid stand up and say, okay, we're going to use you as a little experiment today. And so we'll try to work through a problem that perhaps affects all the kids. So between, the rehearsals, the little mini master classes, guinea pig time, and sometimes if I think a kid is struggling a little bit, I'll usually give them a lesson. I'll say, why don't you come early and I'll see if I can help you with this. So I try to give them as much guidance and information as I can in the 2 hours per week that I have with them.
Have you always been interested in conducting, and have you always been interested in teaching? Because clearly they're two passions. And I was just curious, a lot of times when we if you go on to be a professional blank player, your whole focus has been, or a lot of your focus has been on that. And it's not as though teaching and conducting are completely, it's not like one is, you're going to be a fantastic butcher and the other one's you're going to be I don't know, like a pilot. So they're related, but were all three of those thread? A butcher and a pilot. Another awesome song. You know that song? It was ABBA, third album. Deep cut. Get it? Deep cut. Anyway, so did all three of those passions or drives, were they always a part of you?
I think so. I did take a little break from teaching in the 90s because I was just doing too many things. I had to stop teaching privately in the 90s because I had started Eclipse Chamber Orchestra in 1992, and then I was conducting what was then the Friday Morning Music Club Orchestra in 95. And and the National Symphony and Brass of Peace. It's just like I had to give up something. And so it's like, okay, I sent my last kid off to college, and then I had to quit teaching because I just didn't have enough time in the day. And then I started teaching again, perhaps in 2016, because I'm sure you guys know that I had to leave playing because I acquired dystonia. And so, when I could feel that, before I even knew what I had, I could feel like things were not so good. I thought, well, okay, I'm not conducting orchestras right now. Let me get back into teaching. And frankly, I really love teaching. I really do. And I missed it. I thought to myself, oh my God, why did it take you so long to get back into private teaching? Because at that point, I felt like I had suffered with the instrument so much between, learning it the first time and learning it well, to get into the National Symphony, and then overcoming the adversities of what turned out to be dystonia. I had learned so much about horn playing and about teaching because I was trying to teach myself, getting through the adversity of having dystonia and not knowing what the hell was going on. I learned so much in trying to save myself. And so I feel like, in a way, even though I'm not playing a single note, I don't play anymore because I'm not allowed. I feel like I'm a better teacher than I've ever been because of everything that I've suffered through. So that was kind of a long answer. I'm so sorry.
No, it was a perfect answer.
That was a great one.
And generous answer. Thank you. So, well, there's a couple directions. Let's talk about the overwhelm a little bit because I think it's a thing. I'm dealing with college students a lot, and they're in I always describe it as cultivation mode and then curation mode. And so when you're in cultivation mode, like if somebody asks, will you do whatever? And you say, yes, 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 yes. You don't know what it is. Does it pay? I don't know if it doesn't pay. Is it like, well, I don't, yes, 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 yes. And then at some point you start to get these signals like a fork in the brain. Like I need it's too much. So when that happens, how do you what does that look like in your brain, or how do you recognize that? And then, so there's that part. And then how do you have the hard conversations with the people that you need to get out of those sort of relationships and say, hey, I need to pull back on this, or I'm not going to be doing any more of this, or I need to get out of this commitment. Like, what are those two things like for you?
I would say when I was kind of backing away from all of the orchestras that I was conducting, because I was going through sort of a crisis, I didn't do it very well. I just said, something, I have to, for my own sake, I have to leave. Or if something wasn't turning out the way that I thought it could, I was just like, something, I just have to leave this because I don't want the stress right now. So it came to the point where life was kind of so stressful that I just had to say, I'm sorry, I've got to go. And it was almost that abrupt. And I kind of feel bad about it in retrospect, but at some point you have to understand that your health is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And for my whole life, I had sacrificed my life, my health, everything for the art. And comes a point where you have to say, I have to think about myself right now. And it didn't feel good, but I had to do it. And I didn't do it well either. I just said, see ya, gotta go.
Well, so how would you see? I've been terrible about. I've left everything in a huff, and it's like I reflect on my career and I think about what are the common denominators in all these situations, and it's the guy in the mirror every morning. And so So how do you wish you would have handled some of those things, or how might you have handled them differently, given the opportunity to?
Maybe been a little bit more forthcoming with my own sort of personal suffering, I guess. I tend to be a stoic. I tend to be, kind of, maybe, I don't know where this comes from. Freud would have a field day with this, but I always feel like I have to portray myself as being very strong, whether it comes from the days when, being a woman horn player, you had to kind of put up this little tough front, like I'm as good as you are. And you can't tell me I can't play the horn because I'm a woman. Maybe it came from that. I don't know. Freud, like I said, ask Freud. But I feel like I've always had to kind of put up this strong front. And so there was a lot that I didn't share about what was going on inside of me, about my own, suffering on the inside. And so I just, rather than share it and say, I'm going through this right now, it's like, I can't deal with telling you why I'm leaving. I just have to go. So like I said, I wish I could have been stronger in being able to be less strong.
Wow. Boy, it's like
there's a T-shirt right there.
Yeah. Yeah, that was super deep.
That was a good one.
Yeah. And the being in an orchestra, especially, I'm guessing back then, you conveying anything but strength was frowned upon. But then when you're a woman, as you just touched on, where there are a number of people who are already, even if they're being, and if you're not, well, if you're listening, I'm putting this in air quotes, like complimentary, and saying, oh, wow, she's really strong for a woman, or, oh, wow, she plays the horn really well for a woman. So they're already assigning a lack of strength to you, that you couldn't show any weakness to those people. That's a lot to unpack.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you for saying that, because it's kind of true. I mean, they say something like, well, for a woman to be considered half as good as a man, she has to be twice as good.
Sure.
And I always felt that. I always felt very driven to be the best. And, even conducting, I work very hard as a conductor. I just do. It's just, I feel like a fraud if I don't work hard at something, so I always felt, and then, you're up there on the podium as a conductor, and, there are haters when it comes to women on the podium. And so thankfully, I was born with this very thick Italian skin, so it's come in very handy. This thick Italian skin comes in very handy as a horn player and as a conductor.
Huh. Well, let's go in a different direction. I've noticed a difference in the however many years I've been teaching, in terms of the kids and how kids are, and it feels different. The last 10 years especially feels different to me. Have you picked, like, what would you say the difference in terms of either the personalities or the groupthink, or not groupthink in a negative way, but you've been on the podium a long time with these young people, and have you noticed a change in how they were? I was going to say evolution, but that doesn't even, I don't think that's fair.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. I would say that kids have evolved as humans. I see kids being a little bit more human towards each other. I felt like in my world back when I was a kid, it was a little bit more dog eat dog, and I find that kids, maybe because their parents are more evolved, the kids are more evolved. They support each other. I think the universities have also learned that if you want your kids to evolve as healthy musicians, that you have to create a supportive studio environment. So that's the other thing I'm seeing, that not only are the high schoolers more evolved and they're more supportive and they seem more mentally healthy, that the universities are creating atmospheres where the studios are like very supportive. And I hear that a lot now from the university settings, like, oh yeah, my studio is great. I mean, I keep in touch with all my kids. And they are like, oh yeah, my studio at blah, blah, blah university, it's so good. And we all really support each other and help each other. And I love hearing that, because I never felt that in college, that we had this like supportive atmosphere. It felt very dog eat dog, And so that's a nice evolution. So I see the high schoolers evolving mentally and as humans, and I see the universities evolving. The other thing though, that's kind of unfortunate, is that because we had to work harder to like listen to a great recording of this or that.
Oh,
I think kids are a little lazier than they used to be.
yeah.
I mean, if I said to a kid, you go get that recording of, Bruckner 9 and you go listen to it, they would go buy it and they'd go listen to it.
Yeah.
Now kids have like this whole world of videos and music
That's
that
too
they can
much.
just, they don't bother.
Mhm.
It's like I hate to say it, they're getting a little lazy in that department. I notice,
Mhm.
they just don't want to, it's so easy. It's right there. And they're not listening to stuff. They're not listening to music, so that's what I'm finding.
Yeah.
That
I had a funny experience. I had a former student come in, and there's no secrecy here. So there's 7 students at CMU right now, and 3 of them happen to be playing a tango piece this semester. And so one of them said in studio class, "Oh, we should learn to tango." I have a former student who graduated 15 years ago who teaches tango. So I texted him and didn't tell the kids. And then here comes the next week. Here he comes with his wife, who's his dance partner as
Beautiful.
well. And their 2-month-old baby, who I got to hold a baby for the first time in I don't know how long. And the baby was perfect. He was just perfect. He fussed for 30 seconds out of 50 minutes. I was over the moon. But anyway, so they leave, and I'm talking with the studio a little bit. And I can't remember how it came up, but I just sort of offhandedly said, and I guess I'd never said it to them, but I said, yeah, I have a strict no jerk rule in my policy. I didn't use the word jerk, but they got the impression of what I was saying.
Mm-hmm. Good for you.
And they looked. One of them reacted, and I don't remember. I wish I'd remember specifically what they said, but it was one of these things where like, you better never. Like there was one of these. They didn't know that I was so intentional about it, but they recognized what they had across the board, and they were like, "Don't screw this up, old man." I got it. But it made me feel good, like that it wasn't a thing that I had like beaten into them that was going to be the case, but that just that the actions spoke louder there. I was tickled by that. I had a
Awesome.
good teacher moment. Yeah.
Great.
Rex Martin at Northwestern for my undergrad, he used to say that right out loud to us. He said that that he was adamant that if 2 of his former students ran into each other at a professional audition, that you didn't have to be best friends, but it needed to be a good thing that you saw that other person and that it felt good. And he said there's lots of people in the world that will not make you feel good. And he was fiercely protective of each of us individually, but just of the whole concept of the studio, and that it had to be nurturing at all times, and that didn't just come from him, that it came from all of us in all directions, including towards him. I mean, so it was, it was a great example early on, because life is too short. It's too, and that's the thing about Brass of Peace, is that when you hear people who are, alumni talk about the group and about you. First of all, like when they talk about you and about the group, it's kind of like they're talking about like one thing, which I mean as a compliment. It's just kind of the whole experience that you're intertwined with their colleagues, with everything. But they just speak in such high, like Jen Montone. If you talk to her, who we have interviewed before, who is the principal horn of the Philadelphia Orchestra, you talk to her about Brass of Peace, and she won't go on for like 20 minutes like I do, but that's just because she's not a windbag. But you can, she will, like, she gets real serious and real complimentary, you can tell it's coming straight from her heart when and anybody you talk to from Brass of Peace does that. So congratulations to you, because you've done an incredible job of creating a culture. That's really, really important. And you've helped to train all these famous musicians, but I would say that the culture that you've created, that all these people are passing on, is at least as important as helping these musicians become world class.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting you say that, because one of the things I always tell my kids is you have to hold the torch high, meaning wherever you go, whatever group you play in, whether it's all state or youth orchestra or college, you have to be sort of the bearer of the torch. You have to show people what excellence is by how you deport yourself in groups other than brass of peace. So we have a second expression, which is hold the torch high, meaning, be the example, show people what can be done at your age. And I think it works. I think it works. I think they do take that on. And frankly, my goal as an educator is to help them gain the skills to differentiate themselves in college, because they have all these ensemble skills, intonation, blending, listening around, being able to play together, chamber music skills. And if they take those skills to college, well, their professors are going to notice.
It's a leg up.
Right? They're going to notice, like, that kid, wow, he knows how to blend with the other guy, and he always plays in tune with them. He knows how to phrase. Like, what's that about?
Right.
And so they bring that to college, and then they get, better assignments, and hopefully they go forward faster. That is my goal. My goal is to get them to their dream. And it's got to start somewhere. So.
Oh, that's powerful.
I'd like to know more about how does it work and what's the process of it. But before we forget, I'm sorry if you'll forgive me, Andrew, I keep forgetting to tell you that Houchin Horns aims to spread the joy of music through providing the highest level of product, services, and resources to the brass playing community. Did I tell you that?
You actually tell me all the time, but keep going.
Okay. They stock the finest makes of brass instruments, including Bach, Conselmer, Eastman, Shires, Engelberg, Schmidt, Paxman, Tyne, and Yamaha, among many others. They do repairs and
I would
customizations
suggest,
in-house.
by the way, you can play all those horns together at the same time. It gets really interesting colors working, in my experience.
They have a 15-day money-back guarantee with free shipping on all new instruments and accessories, with multiple easy financing options on all inventory?
You've done that before. What is wrong with your brain in that word?
Terms and conditions apply. Part of the conditions is that you understand inventory. You can browse extensive news and resources at their page on houchinhorns.com for great pedagogical info, and articles and interviews and videos and events. And if you enter the promo code Junkies at online checkout, you receive 10% off your purchase from houchinhorns.com. Some limitations apply. I'm very sorry. They have great inventory.
You can also enter the promo code first. Enter Sylvia, and it will actually make you a better human. And then enter Junkies, and then you get the discount. So yeah.
Okay, so if you're not familiar with brass piece, what happens? Like, what's the process? Like, how do you join it? What's the concert series look like? Who happens to be in there?
Okay, so every year it's by audition. There are no fees.
It parallels the school year?
It parallels the school year. Usually I wait like a month, because I wait for the kids to kind of get situated in their school year and get started and everything. And then we start in like October. And so it's by audition. It's tuition free, no application fee. I actually put them through kind of a process, like a professional audition. So we start with a preliminary audition, then we get down to semis, and then the finalists actually play for the returning kids in the group. So I actually let the returning kids help me decide who's going to be in the group with them. So it's like a 3-step process to get in. We meet every Sunday from 7 to 9. And I usually give them a month off around the holidays. I always try to plan the first concert or concerts around November to kind of really, make them have to really get in gear between October and November. And then I usually plan at least 2 or 3 other concerts for the second semester. So our next concert is, I think it's the 6th, which is a Sunday at the Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land, which is extraordinarily beautiful space. I mean, just visually, it's amazing. You can't help but be inspired when you play there. So we play there every year with organist Lisa Mitchell Tyler. So they're expected to be at every rehearsal, unless they have a fork in brain and they can't make it. They are expected to be there, and that's part of the culture too. I mean, it takes a lot for a kid to say, okay, I got to miss brass a piece. It's like, you don't miss rehearsals, period. And so, the standard is high, and kind of the repertoire I choose depends on what I have that year. So this year is kind of a rebuilding year because of last year. Last year was while I did have a season, it was a complicated season. But this year it's basically rebuilding, you know. And so these kids haven't been trained yet. You know, they don't have the fundamental skills of intonation, blend, playing together, all of the basic chamber skills. So this year has been, you know, I'd say the music's been a little bit more on the less technical side, so that they have more opportunity to listen and to think about phrasing and blending and all of that. So this year's kind of a rebuilding year, but it's still joyful. Some of the kids, you know, I got to tell you, COVID has really changed whether kids want to go into music or not. Let me just say that. You know, when I was taking a show of hands, like who's going into music, a lot of the kids who thought they might be going into music were like, I don't think so. You know, so, but what's interesting now is that some of them have kind of changed their view now. Like, okay, well, maybe I'll do a double major. Maybe I'll double in IT and performance.
Yeah.
So some of them have kind of come around to, okay, well, I'm not going to discard my dream altogether just because the whole music world was not working for a year and a half.
Right.
You know? So,
yeah, that's what I'm seeing at CMU. The other thing I'm noticing is that that I teach entrepreneurship classes. Enrollment is like my marketing class enrollment's double what it usually is.
I bet it is. And I think it's great. First of all, I think it's great that you're teaching it, but I think it's great that a lot of universities are starting to get on board with getting the kids to think about, well, what else can you do with your dream of being in the music world and maybe not performing? Because there's such a huge world out there of things to do with music. Huge.
Well,
Why
if I
just
don't
limit
win
it?
an orchestra job, I'm a failure. It's this antiquated. It's
Ridiculous.
Like,
Ridiculous.
I could soapbox that forever, but I want to go back to. So you do this tuition free. How do you do that?
I don't get paid. They don't pay. But what I do is I have what I do
You said
is I said do on air. I am so sorry.
This is a family show, Sylvia.
That's right. My fork and brain.
Yeah. Oh my God, I got to really get control of myself. So I have a sponsoring organization. Which
That's
is
what I
meant
wondered.
for artists. It's called Fractured Atlas.
Oh yeah.
So I
Talk
take in
about Fractured
donations.
Atlas. What a great organization.
It's been hugely helpful for me because, frankly, I don't want to have a board of directors. I don't want to be a nonprofit corporation. Been there, done that. What a pain in the doo-doo. I mean, I just don't want to go there again. So, and I don't need a board because I know exactly what I want to do with the kids. Fractured Atlas gives me the opportunity to raise money. They actually send out these little letters to people who donate, so I don't have to worry about that so much, even though I always send a handwritten note of thanks. But, you know, it's really helpful for people who don't want to be a nonprofit yet want to be able to take donations for their group.
They act as so it's a fiscal sponsor, basically.
It is.
You got two paths. You can either create a board and fill out all the paperwork and deal with the annual this and that and the everything to become a 501c3, and then you can accept grants and donations, tax with a tax benefit to the donor, or you can look for a fiscal sponsor. And Fractured Atlas is set up to be that for small, well, not just small, but small arts organizations who don't want to deal with becoming a not-for-profit. So they act as the sponsor of the grant. That makes a lot of sense because it's not you're not making any money. You're probably losing money because if you're not making any money, this takes money to operate. And you've made commitments to people and to students and to, there's stuff involved. So it's an incredible thing that you're keeping afloat there.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't need to get paid for it. I'd much rather take the money that we take in for donations. I'd much rather use it to take the kids on tour.
Right.
To Duquesne and Carnegie Mellon and up to Cleveland, which is what we did on our last tour. We saw the Cleveland Orchestra. We got to work with Jim Nova and Zach Smith. And, it's just, that's what I want to use the money for. I want to give the kids a great experience.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I need to pay myself.
So, Sylvia, we have got a brand new feature of the Brass Junkies. You are the first person. What you're feeling right now is honored. In case you couldn't put your finger on it. This is the Practicing Corner presented by Hitz Academy Practice Coaching. Want to get more done in less time in the practice room? Of course we all do. Like compound interest in a bank account, making yourself even just 10% more efficient in the practice room will make you a better practicer forever and will continue paying dividends for literally the rest of your career. Let practice coaching from Hitz Academy help you implement systems that will improve every aspect of your practice routine, do better at auditions, and unlock your true potential as an artist. Learn more at practicecoach.link/coaching, which is going to be in the show notes. And so the practicing corner, is going to feature people like you who have been at the top of the business for a very long time, giving us some sort of a tip for practicing. It could be about mental approach. It could be about how you structure a session, anything. What do you got for us, Sylvia?
Well, if I had to choose one thing, it would be to observe yourself, but don't judge. So very often what happens is when kids are practicing, they're like constantly judging themselves. They're judging, oh, that was terrible. Oh. And they don't just observe. It's like, okay, go towards artistry, observe what happened, and then go back and fix it without being emotionally involved in the practice. So for the performance part, you put your heart and soul in, you observe what happened, and then you go back and you fix it. I call it like fixing it like a math problem. You know, we wouldn't add 6 and 4 together and accidentally write 11 and then go, oh, I'm horrible. I suck. I'm the worst mathematician in the world. We would just take a bloody eraser and we'd erase it and we'd put 10. Right. You know, but here we are as musicians, like we missed something or it didn't go exactly the way we wanted to. And we're like, oh, it sucked. Instead of just saying, oh, I missed that note from above. Or that slur needs to be a little smoother. And just approaching your practice like a math problem and not getting emotionally involved in the practice part. Save the emotion for the actual like run through or the performance. But when you practice, just be analytical. Just be analytical. Just see it like it's just a math problem. It's like, okay, I keep missing that note from above. So I'm just going to keep trying to go to hit it. And, you know, and usually when we're missing a note, it's actually an interval we're missing. We're not really missing a note. We're missing an interval, unless it's the first attack. So that's the first tip is don't be so emotionally involved with fixing your problems. Just be analytical about it and save the emotion for the performance or for the read through or whatever. Okay. The second one, which is important, and then I'll leave it at that, is what I call morsel practicing. So what you do is instead of trying to play through a whole passage of notes that you can't play, you just pick 5 or 6 that you actually can. So let's say, you know, as a kid, you were going, no, da 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 da, and you were practicing an A2 that did that. Well, if you kept fumbling all over it because you just kept practicing through it and you never really took it apart, the first thing you do is go da 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 dum. Okay, I got that. Da 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 dum. Let me make sure I got that. Yeah, I think I got it. Da 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 dum. And then you take the next 5 morsels. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Okay, I got that. Now let me put 2 morsels together. Da 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 da. Okay, I got that. Rather than like playing through the whole line and fumbling the same notes over and over, you just morsel it out. Make sure you got all the morsels really good and solid in your fingers and your lips, and then start putting morsels together. And then when you've got all the morsels where you need them to be, then start putting morsels together in part of a string. So I call that morsel practicing. I find that really helpful to help kids figure out technical passages. Just figure out how to teach them to get it once and for all.
Wow, dig morsel practice.
Morsel
I'm
practice.
stealing that.
Yeah.
Morsel practice.
And the math problem, that is what a wonderful analogy. That's really great. And because also if a math problem goes really well, I didn't tend to like spike my pencil and think that I was the greatest thing ever either. Because as soon as I use that to validate or really nailing a passage that's been giving me trouble, and then the next time it doesn't go as well, because we are not guaranteed linear progress on anything, not as a conductor, not as a teacher, Absolutely. Not as a practicer, not as anything. And so then it goes not as well next time, which is not a question of if, but when. and then suddenly I'm like, oh, maybe so I wasn't, and then I feel like a fraud, and like, I can run with the data point.
Head games, head games, head games. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
But the math problem, that's there you go. Yeah, just get out the eraser. I like it. That just integrated itself into my teaching, and I will. Well, now I'm publicly admitting I'm not going to credit you, but yeah, that's. I'm like, anytime anybody says like, oh, you're, like, oh, thanks, you really help explain it. He's like, yep, those 3 things I just like. Yeah, none of that is my own material. There's never been an original thought that's ever fallen out of my mouth, but I know who to steal from, like Sylvia. So this has been wonderful. We could talk to you forever.
Gentlemen, it's been my privilege to be here with you. Thank you so much for asking me. It's been so much fun. I've had a blast.
Yeah.
You seem surprised, but I don't blame you.
I think she felt obligated. She's like, this wasn't as painful. That's why she's scheduled for 9 a.m. She's like, just rip the Band-Aid off. I got the rest of the day to to try and recover. Yeah.
No. The morning is my hour. That's my hour. That's my hour. I get up, I got up this morning. I did my dance party. I had my steel cut oats. This is my hour. You
awesome.
picked the right hour for me.
And also thank you for your flexibility, because we got a curveball. We were scheduled to do this a month ago, and then my son
life happens.
Registered a super low-grade fever, but in the time of COVID, even though he didn't have a fever the next day or again, but you don't just send your kid to school nowadays. So it's just not really the considerate thing to do. So we had to audible out, or else he was going to be coming in and asking me Minecraft questions in the middle. So actually not. No, he's like his daddy. He just likes to tell like 12-minute stories, whether the person really cares or not. So yeah,
I love it.
I wish I could say he gets that from his mother, but Lance would laugh so hard he'd fall out of his chair. So we are going to have Sylvia stick around here for the bonus episode, which is available to all Patreon patrons. We've had a number of people sign up recently. Thank you very much to all of you for helping to keep the lights on around here. You can always hear a bonus episode, which is just a continuation of the conversation with each guest 1 week after their episode releases, and there is a long backlist now of bonus episodes from some real awesome people. So you can go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn about that, and we're going to ask Sylvia a couple of more questions. And Lance has got a question book actually, which has some pretty outrageous questions in it's called The Book of Questions. Yeah,
okay, but I got a warning for you. I've got noise canceling earphones on, so if I don't like any of those questions, noise canceling.
See, this is like
I'm ready for you.
Yeah,
I'm ready for you.
I like it.
Here's a pertinent one then. Have you ever disliked someone for being luckier or more successful than you, Andrew? This is a question for you. Yeah. I want you to say this in front of Sylvia. Give us your answer.
Have I ever disliked someone? That's all I heard. Yes.
Oh, that was either more successful or more talented than you.
Yes, I've disliked lots of people. So yeah, whatever reason you put on the end of that, the answer is probably yes. All right, so thank you, Sylvia. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Lance, I thought you really brought it today.
I couldn't have done any better.
Incredibly professional, just prepared, inspirational. It felt like you treated this interview like a math problem, where the really bad questions that you asked, you recovered it without emotional. It was good. So you didn't.
You're
judge
so
yourself.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
And that is going to do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray4Jens on Twitter and Instagram, and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/Pray4Jens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. You were were just talking about auditions and how you utilized meditation in the semis and the finals of the Met, but you also briefly talked before about the A and B and C buckets for audition prep. Can you talk a little bit about that and how, I know it's been a long time since you've been on the audition circuit, but can you talk about how you lead students, specifically they're practicing leading up to an audition?
Yes, I'll go back to when Nathaniel was preparing for his Cleveland audition. He had a big list. It was like, oh my God, really that? So we went through the list, we talked it over. Which one are you the most comfortable with? And we put those in the A pile. Which one needs a little more housekeeping? B pile. Which one needs excavating? C pile. And I'll have them really revisit and be quite thorough in their organization of what they're going to pay more attention to and how they do that. And be very clear in that C pile, the ones that need excavation, how to excavate them. Let's go back to what Caruso's going to make your Shostakovich 5 low tutti in the first movement. What do you need to practice to open up that low register in a loud dynamic? What do you need for the Barber of Seville overture solo in your articulation practice? How do we work on that? Which scales are we going to practice? How are we going to practice them? So I usually circle back in my advice to my students and their piles, their A, B, and C piles, with what skill sets and how to practice each skill set. And I'm almost always going to go back to a Caruso because that's my language.